This is the Economic Club of Florida, a distinguished platform for discussion of the major national issues of the day. On today's program, Chris Thompson of Brand USA on the challenge of attracting visitors back to the United States and Florida from the coronavirus pandemic.
Getting on the top of the health aspect of the pandemic, not only here in the country but around the world, us being able to show people that we're on top of that we can deliver a safe and healthy experience is really the biggest challenge we're going to have. It's not a demand issue.
Good day and welcome to the 530th in our series of distinguished speaker programs. I'm Harvey Bennett for the Economic Club of Florida. We're happy to have with us and to welcome back to Florida today, Chris Thompson, President and CEO of Brand USA. Chris, many of our members know you from your days as the head of Visit Florida, which is the state's public-private tourism organization. You've been up in Washington, D.C. now, though, for the past few years with Brand USA. Tell us more about that.
So yeah, though I still call Tallahassee my home, I've been commuting back and forth for the last 8 years and otherwise traveling around the country and around the world. Brand USA is very similarly constituted as Visit Florida was. It's a public-private partnership. It's in partnership with the federal government. We take resources that are matched by the federal government and then use those to grow incremental international visitation and spend to benefit our nation's economy, to help enhancing the image of the U.S. around the world. And this thing didn't exist 10 years ago and brought into existence in 2010, and I've been there for the last 8 of the first 10 years, and it's been an awesome experience.
And there's a visa component to that too, right?
Yeah, so our funding comes from, there are 39 visa waiver countries, meaning we don't require a visa. So everyone from those countries that want to travel to the United States, they need to file with ESTA process, which is online registration to be able to take advantage of not having a visa. They pay $14, $10 of that gets set aside in a tourism promotion trust fund, and then we bring $1 to get $1. And the combination of how we do that, our budget usually is at the level of about $150 million that we then take and promote the U.S. around the world.
As we record this interview, we're in the middle of this coronavirus pandemic. Chris, how difficult will it be to bring tourists back to Florida and the USA, especially those international tourists who are such an important segment?
You know, this time and this pandemic is bringing hospitality, travel and tourism industry to the forefront in ways that it would have never been brought before. Because what we define as travel and tourism, which is, lodging and restaurants and retail and attractions and museums, those are the things that also define our hometowns, that make us be attracted to where we've moved to call home and otherwise keep us there. But right now, all that's challenged, and the ability for our visitors to actually get here. So the top couple markets that we would promote to: Canada, Mexico, UK, Europe. Every one of those, we have entry restrictions that do not allow individuals, the majority of individuals, to travel from those countries. So that is really one of the major hurdles. Obviously, the pandemic, getting on top of the health aspect of the pandemic, not only here in the country but around the world, us being able to show people that we're on top of that we can deliver a safe and healthy experience is really the biggest challenge we're going to have. It's not a demand issue. It's not that the U.S. has become any less aspirational. It is really complicated by all of the effects and consequences of the pandemic. And until we can lower those border restrictions, and until we can, it really is a consumer confidence issue. We need to show the world that we, as citizens of the United States, can get out and about in our hometowns and our home states, within regions in the country and around the country. So far, we're not doing a great job at that. So before we can convince them that we can provide a good opportunity, a safe and healthy opportunity for them, we're going to have to show them that we can do it.
Yeah. And they're facing the same challenge. Chris, tell us just a little bit about yourself and how it's impacted your life journey.
Yeah. I always tell people travel and tourism was something that found me. I wasn't looking for it, mostly due to personal circumstances. I moved back to Tallahassee with a real estate background, but didn't see the opportunity that I had in Atlanta, Georgia, where I came from with my wife. And so I decided I wanted to be an economic developer and go work for the state of Florida promoting economic development. They had two divisions. One was economic development, one was tourism. They said, we have no jobs in economic development, but we have these tourism jobs. And I said to myself, under my breath, I said, what help does Mickey Mouse really need? I mean, there's a tourism job. So that's how I found tourism 28 years ago.
Sure. And
all but the last 8 years, I've had the privilege at the state level when it was a division of state government, and then when it was a public-private partnership at Visit Florida, and then I helped start the Convention and Visitors Bureau for Tallahassee. So, something I wasn't looking for, I've turned into a career, and I've been fortunate to be in the right place at the right time to capitalize on some opportunities that were given to me.
Sure, and what a fertile training ground in Florida you found for such a career.
And by the way, I still promote Florida because last time I checked, it's one of the 50 states, and Tallahassee is one of the 400 major cities, and so Florida's close to home and in my heart. But now I promote all 50 states, 5 territories, the District of Columbia, and take that message all around the world.
That's terrific. That's terrific. Well, Chris, thank you so much. We certainly look forward to hearing your formal remarks in just a moment or so and learning more about the path forward for U.S. international tourism.
Really looking forward to my time today with the club.
Now, here's Cindy O'Connell, our chair of the Economic Club of Florida and director of the Florida Prepaid College Foundation, with our formal introduction.
I'm so pleased to introduce our speaker today, Mr. Chris Thompson, a personal friend of mine. But he's coming in this very important role as President and CEO of Brand USA, the nation's public-private partnership dedicated to increasing international visitation to the U.S. through marketing and promotional efforts. I believe it was 8 years ago. Is that about right? Okay. Chris joined Brand USA and since that time has accelerated the organization's efforts to build and execute effective marketing strategies to increase U.S. travel exports, create jobs, strengthen the economy, and help enhance the image of the United States with people all over the world. Under Chris's leadership, Brand USA has nearly tripled its partnership network and more than doubled its partner contributions and program offerings. And prior to taking the helm of the U.S. tourism platform, he led the state as the CEO of Visit Florida, and under his leadership, Florida realized record growth in international visitation. Chris has over 30 years in the tourism industry, beginning his career at the Division of Tourism in 1983 and under the former Florida Department of Commerce, working directly with and for our dear late Governor Wayne Mixon. While at the Department of Commerce, he became Bureau Chief for Domestic Tourism in April 1986. In November 1988, he joined the Leon County, Florida Tourist Development Council as the organization's first executive director. In April 1991, he took the leadership of the Tallahassee Area Convention and Visitors Bureau as president. Truly, his experience in travel and tourism in that industry is simply unmatched. Chris is a graduate of the University of Florida, where he earned a degree in business management. When not in D.C., or literally traveling around the world promoting U.S. as a travel destination, Chris resides also in Tallahassee. And today he is joined by his lovely wife, Susan Thompson, his son, James Thompson, and his brother-in-law, Chris Smith. Please give an Economic Club of Florida robust welcome to our own Chris Thompson.
So thank you, Cindy. It's a great privilege to be here. I am a club member. You may not know that, but I guess I'm the out-of-town membership category because for the last 8 years, not only have I not been much in Tallahassee, I've been really traveling all over the country and all over the world. I do look forward to sometime in the near future retiring so I can come back to being a full-fledged member and being with many of you. It's great. This is the first face-to-face meeting I've had in 143 days. And so most of what I've been doing is on the Zoom digital platforms, and I have to say it's so nice to be in a room. Those platforms are great, but the thing they don't provide for you is that energy and things that you can get when you're doing face-to-face. It is a privilege to be here. This is actually a little different group than I would normally talk to, but as I thought about this presentation, the hospitality industry is being brought forward in ways that it would have never had the platform to be recognized in unfortunately a negative way, and you'll see what that means when I get into the presentation. And and all the challenges that we're having to deal with as we look forward to trying to find a way to welcome international visitors back are things we're dealing with here within the country. So I think there's a lot of things that I think I can bring forward that will be very helpful. So I'm going to do this dually because I can't see that screen. But the first thing I always like to talk about is the economic impact of travel and tourism. So you'll see on the screen, and I think this is very important. An economics club, I think, could understand this. You know, we have professional men and women, we have business owners, we have research folks, we have economists in this club, and I think travel and tourism often is underappreciated for what it actually contributes to the economy. This is a slide full of a lot of bullet points. The middle bullet points talk about the economic contribution of all of travel and tourism, domestic and international. So focus on that 2.9% of GDP. So 2.9% of the country's GDP tied to what's labeled as travel and tourism, us moving around the country domestically and us welcoming international visitors. It's a $1.87 trillion economic output and $180 billion in spend. And then overall jobs, 9.2 million jobs supported by the industry, 1.3 million supported by the international part that I work with. The top three bullets are the part that I'm responsible for, which is growing travel as an export. People don't realize that travel is an export. The product is the experience and the memories people have and take back with them, and the export is the money they leave behind. In 2019, which was the last full year of numbers that we had, we hosted nearly 80 million people from outside our borders. They collectively spent over $233 billion. 27% of all the service exports that the United States exports tied to us and the travel and tourism industry, 9% of the largest economy in the world is tied to hospitality. So that's a really critical important. In these days when we're talking about balance of trade and trade deals and everything else, our industry is one of the only industries that actually provides a positive balance of trade surplus of over $50 billion a year. So I think that slide is probably as important to many of you as you talk about economic contributions. And I want you to remember that 2.9% GDP number, because that's going to be real important when we get to the next slide. So let's talk about tourism in Florida. For all but the last 8 years, and by the way, this is still my home. I've been commuting for 8 years. I've been home for 143 straight days. My wife loves that, although 2 weeks in she said, I'm going to have to get used to you being around all the time again. But for the 20 years prior to that, I was involved in promoting Florida. So no surprise to anybody, Florida tourism is the number one industry in our state. The last full year of numbers we hosted over 127 million people to the state of Florida. So think about that. What is that, 6 times our population. 14 million of those were international visitors. Collectively, they spent $85 billion to our state economy. It employs 1.4 million people in our state. And it's probably the single reason why we still to this day don't have a state income tax, and that why we can not have one, because we have so many people contributing to our economy. So that's the numbers in the state of Florida. So let's talk about Brand USA. I feel like I need to give a little context about who we are and what we do and how we came about in order for everybody to have an appreciation for, I don't know where it went. Yeah. There we go. About Brand USA, come on. There we go. So here's a chart that is showing you U.S. market share and total long-haul travel. Long haul is defined by outside of your borders and a trip that takes you more than just an overnight. So this is almost 20 years of numbers, starting in 2000 and all the way up to a forecast for 2019. So the bars represent the total number of international visitors, and then the line represents the global market share. So you notice that for the decade of 2000 to 2010, though we were growing, our market share was on a decline. Of course, there was a big event, an unfortunate event that happened in 2001 that changed the world, and it actually changed the way that people looked about traveling in general, and in some cases how they looked upon the U.S. travel. So those numbers probably were the principal reason why in 2010, and this just to highlight that. So that chart showed you that the United States share of international arrivals dropped 37%. At one point prior to 2000, we were at a 17% market share. It dropped to 12%. And those are big numbers against big numbers. And between 2020 and 2010, International travel grew by 20 million travelers annually. The U.S.'s share stayed flat, so we were losing market share. And those numbers at the bottom of that slide talk to you and show you what it meant in visitors, spending, revenue, tax revenue, and lost jobs. That was the impetus behind creating Visit Florida. I haven't done that in a long time. Brand USA. And prior to that, we were the only developed country in the world that did not have an organization or revenue generated to growing travel as an export. So in 2010, we were created. So this is a list of our defining moments. It created our funding source. It created Brand USA. In 2012, we had a really big problem with issuing visas. In some of our biggest countries of origin, it took 100 days to get an appointment to get a visa, and there was no guarantee that you and everybody in your family was going to get one. So the president at the time said we can do better, and we did. And they also called for a national travel and tourism strategy, which was a cross-government strategy about how there are tons of things that the government touches, which is travel policy, that influences our ability to be able to do our job. First time ever we had a national travel and tourism strategy. In 2012, the president said we can do better welcoming people through our gateway airports, and that we can do better in making that a more enjoyable experience. So called for efficiencies in entry policy. When we first got brought into existence, we had a 5-year authorization. Nothing ever happens early in Washington, but in December of 2014, nearly a year ahead of the September 30 deadline in 2015, we got reauthorized by Congress. We had to do it again by 2020. This past December 20th, I was at my oldest son's wedding, and the evening of his wedding, we got reauthorized for the second time. This time it was for 7 years and not 5 years. So I don't think there's any better testament that we probably are doing a pretty good job than to have Congress support us and do it across parties, across chambers, and do it in a very strong bipartisan way. So what did that create? Well, it kind of added the third leg to a three-legged stool. Forever and ever, and Barney and I were talking about this, the U.S. Department of Commerce has been the person selling the United States and everything related to economic development, including travel and tourism. The major advocacy organization in Washington, D.C., umbrelling the entire industry is the U.S. Travel Association. And then so you added the third leg, which was us. And for the first time ever, our country had a marketing organization that was promoting travel and growing it as an export and a contributor to our economy. So our mission, and I think this is critically important, to increase incremental international visitation, spend, and market share to fuel our nation's economy and to enhance the image of the USA worldwide. So that's a pretty high calling, particularly the last part, which is the image, most of which we have little control over, but otherwise we try to do the best we can as it relates to how we are perceived and otherwise people think about us around the world. Our funding source, this is kind of a crowded slide, but focus on the $14 in the middle of the slide. There are 39 visa waiver countries. These are countries we do not require a visa. In order for people to travel here from those countries, they have to register electronically every 2 years. They pay a $14 fee. $10 of that is set aside in a tourism promotion trust fund. We have to bring $1 to get $1. And we can either bring a cash contribution or an in-kind contribution. In-kind would be media that we get that doesn't cost us anything that we can submit for an in-kind. So the combination of cash and in-kind, our budget is about $150 million in a normal year. So how about going from 0 to 150 with the creation of Brand USA and us out promoting the country around the world? So this is the travel life cycle. Start in the right-hand quarter. People dream about a vacation. They consider it. They actually make a decision. They activate. They actually travel, and then they share. Where are we on that cycle? So think about this. I've had the privilege of promoting destinations at the local, state, and national level now. At the local level, I say that's the one time when you actually have a chance to influence the delivery of the experience. You're right on top of the product. You're once removed. At the state level, you're twice removed. You have little to do with the delivery of the experience. At the national level, I have nothing to do with any experience that's delivered on the ground in any of the 50 states or the 5 territories. So mine is very top of the funnel, influencing intent to travel, keeping USA top of mind. You'd like to think that's not a tough job. But with the internet and the ability for people to go online, and my counterparts from around the world would say, hey, Chris, any experience you can do in the USA, you can do anywhere else in the world? I said, yeah, but you can only get the USA experience in the USA, and that's what makes us different. And so that's what we have to keep reminding people. Remind them why they love our country, remind them why they want to travel here, and that's our job. So very high-end, top of the funnel, dream and consideration, and then we have a big play on the share side. So when they come and they experience, then we're a big part of them making sure that they're sharing that experience. So that's kind of important as I get into the conversation about what we're doing. So how do we market? 3 buckets of how we spend that $150 million. In 11 markets, the top 11 markets to the U.S., we take a message straight to the consumer. It's our message, 100% of what we want to message to consumers. Very little co-op, no other partner's message, and that's the way we can have the greatest influence. Travel trade. So still to this day, even with the advent of the internet and everything you can do online, people travel through travel agents, tour operators, and people and OTAs, people that aggregate and manage travel. The way they interface with those people have changed due to the internet, but they're still important, particularly when people are coming to the U.S. for the first time. I know when I go somewhere for the first time, I'm likely to go on a package trip just because I know it's safe, it's predictable, and it's something that I feel is going to show me the best way. And then the last thing is cooperative marketing. So we have all the DMOs at the local level, the state level, the destination marketing organizations for the cities and the states are partners with us. All the brands, all the major brands you can think of, all the attractions, all the hotel companies, Marriott, Hilton, Disney, Enterprise Rent-A-Car, all those brands are partners with us, contributing cash and in-kind, and us taking one of our dollars, one of their dollars, and turning it into $3. So 1 + 1 is 3 instead of just 2, and that's the power of what we do. Half of our $150 million budget is deployed doing that. And so what is our message when we take it to the market? We call it many voices. It's not just our message, because sometimes a canned, true commercial message is no longer trusted. So our what we try to do is we try to get the local voices to tell us the story. So those of us that live in the communities that we live in, the reason why we moved to Tallahassee, Florida, the reason why we stay in Tallahassee, Florida, and the things that makes this unique to any other city in the country, we want those people telling that story. There's a creative class of musicians and otherwise, people that were born and raised in the cities they were raised in, and that shaped who they are as artists and everything else. So those are the voices we want people to hear, that they identify with as our pop culture. So those are the voices we're using in our campaigns. I didn't bring examples of that because I knew the medium wasn't going to be great, but I love simple statements, and a simple statement on how we deliver our messages is from mobile to giant screen and everything in between. So we're literally on top of what we carry every day and can't do without. And I never thought I'd be a movie producer, but we have produced 3 IMAX big screen films that are now playing all over the world, and with a company that has done 40 of those, and all 40 of those movies are still showing as we speak today. The last one we did was, one of them was America's Musical Journey. It was a story about how we're a nation of immigrants, and those immigrants came in and founded the genres of American music in all the cities around the country, and the musicians that were the founders of that. And it's a story about how the music in the United States shapes our pop culture. So those are the things we do on the big screen and everything in between. And with the advent of smart TVs, and that's how people watch TV now, and more so less of the cable and more of the streaming type situation, we're actively engaged on that, in that market. Okay. So remember I said there was a Department of Commerce, there's embassies through the Department of State, there's a presence that the federal government has around the world that we still enjoy. So in markets where we're also there, we share the opportunity. In markets where we cannot be because we just don't have enough resource to be everywhere, the federal government is carrying our message. There are volunteer committees, Visit USA committees that are the industry in market that are our partners. And then there's our presence. We have 16 offices around the world. We have 4 in China. And those are our boots on the ground that give us the intel we need and give us the ability for us to have the relationships with the travel trade and the travel media. The combination of all of those, this is the footprint that we work with every day. And I would think you would agree that that's a pretty large footprint all over the world where we're having some semblance of influence. All right, so that's enough about who we are. 2019. Last year I showed you the numbers. So just picture yourself wherever you were on New Year's Eve, and you're enjoying bringing in the good year, and somebody walks up to you and says, so enjoy the good time, because in your very near future, we're going to have a worldwide pandemic, we're going to have a worldwide economic meltdown, and we're going to have generational social unrest like nothing any of us other than the seasoned people have seen. You'd look at that person and say, how many drinks have you had? Because that's never going to happen. 7 months later, look at where we are. So I'll tell you that it has rocked our worlds, our professional worlds, our personal worlds, And it has rocked the hospitality industry disproportionately. And here's why. Because what's defined as hospitality, hotels, restaurants, bars, retail, attractions, museums, anything that is part of an experience you can have in a destination, is also what makes our lives enriched. It's the reasons why we live in the cities we live in. And that's been rocked. So even though they don't necessarily always focus on that part of it, the hospitality industry is what makes our cities our cities. So here's the influences that have happened there. So the first, I guess, reported case that we heard about, of course, when it's coming out of China, you never know whether it's true and whether it's the whole message. But the first time we heard it was an issue was right at the end of December. I think it might have been the 30th. The first death was in January. And then we knew it was coming this way. We had no idea it was going to be what it is today, but it rocked our world. So how has that affected the hospitality business? Today's environment is the worst we've ever faced. While the rest of the economy is in a recession, the travel industry is in a depression. Remember the $2.9 trillion number I told you, the contribution? It's expected that there will be a loss of $1.2 trillion of that as a result of the coronavirus. 8 million jobs lost in the hospitality industry alone. That's 38% of all unemployment in the United States. And on its current trajectory, our industry is not likely to recover till 2024 as far as spend, the thing that defines it as an export. When you look at the things that also shape it, get there. There we go. So just give you a little bit more color to the numbers. The 1.2 trillion is fueled by $505 billion of direct spend. That's 10 times worse than the highest level in the Great Depression, as far as the impact on this industry on a relative basis. 51% of the hospitality industry is unemployed right now. That's 2 times worse than the Great Depression. So that's how the impact has been on the industry. We go in market every month, and we do a sentiment survey. One of the questions we've asked consistently is, how likely are you to travel internationally, not just to the U.S., internationally on a long-haul trip in the next 12 months? Started in March, and the last one we did in July. So we had some semblance of just a couple instances where people were still planning, but look at the drop. People aren't traveling. I will tell you, it's not a demand issue. The U.S. is no less aspirational than it has been. It's totally a health issue. It's a consumer confidence issue, and it's their ability to be able to travel. So that's what we're dealing with. And the 5-year outlook, this is just for international travel, just the part that we're responsible for. That this chart will show you that immediately, overnight, particularly in hotels, that we're going to projected to lose 50 million visitors just in this year. And that's going to be lose 75% of the spend. And it's not so the visitation will recover, projected by 2023. The spend won't recover till 2024. So that's what we're looking at and what we're facing. So to the Economic Club of Florida, that's the economics. So now I'm going to tell you so you might be looking at me and saying, what the hell are you doing? Do you even have a job left? So that's what I've been asking myself for the last 143 days. And so we had a board meeting last week. So we had to make sense of this. We had to put a stake in the ground on when we thought we would have a chance to message again. Right now, if we message, it would be tone deaf. We would be considered insincere, inappropriate, because nobody's receptive to our message about traveling to the United States. So I'm showing you what I showed the board last week, and at some point you got to put a stake in the ground, make assumptions around that recommendation, so I'm giving you an overview of what that looks like. So we did it in 3 categories. One is that we've had to scale our spending back to what we're calling a state of readiness, meaning that is where we are relevant and are meeting expectations that we have of us, our board has of us, our industry and our stakeholders have of us. Normally in a given month, we're spending between $13 and $15 million. We scaled that back to less than $2 million. And that is our state of readiness. We had to put a stake in the ground and say, when will that change? We said, given all the circumstances that we're in right now, that's not changing until April of next year, April 1st. Our fiscal year is October 1 to September 30. First 6 months, we're in a state of readiness. Now, that's all still being relevant because all the content we've created that is telling stories is still there. So when people want to be inspired, when they want to see our content, when they want to know about the U.S., it's all still there. But we're not forcing it on them. It's more organic. We're giving them a chance to do it. So, and then the gating criteria. There have to be a lot of things that change that no one singular one of them changing by themselves is going to be enough. It's a combination of things, and you'll see that in just a second. And then when we get to April 1, what does recovery look like? How are we going to message, come on back? Because it has nothing to do with demand. Remember, it's a health issue, consumer confidence issue, and that's the two things that make this one very, very different than what it's been in the past. So what is the state of readiness? Prepare, let me get here's 7 factors that drive our state of readiness. Prepare for a robust recovery with as many resources as possible. So we had to scale back. We're not getting any cash contributions right now, so we're on reserves. And our reserves have to last for us for as long as we're in a state of readiness until we can get contributions, get match, and then go back to market. We need a recovery campaign that's ready to go so that if it happens on April 1, we're ready to go. Be an optimist and confident. If it happens sooner, we're ready to go. If it's later and we're in a whole year of state of readiness, then okay, we're in a state of readiness. Maintain engagement with those distribution networks. Those tour operators, travel trade, all those people that are facilitating travel are still out there waiting for it to change. So we need to make sure we keep them educated, inspired, and informed. Keep the drumbeat of inspiration alive. Like I said, the U.S. is no less inspirational than it has ever been. It's just that people are not focusing on that right now. Help the industry maintain a state of readiness. All our partners have pulled out of the international market. They're just trying to keep the doors open. They're trying to get enough heads in beds, butts in seats to be able to keep their doors open. They're not focusing on bringing anybody in from the outside. They're trying to get you and me into the restaurants and the hotels in our community, in our states, within the region, or around the country. So they pulled out. So we are their presence internationally, and so we need to help them stay ready. To maintain a pulse on the market, we're doing the sentiment research. We're giving them a pulse of what's happening. We're the only one doing it. So and then we'll communicate entry policy as it changes. All right. So state of gating. Oops, went right by it. Gating events. Gating criteria. I don't think any of these will be a surprise to you, but any one of them by themselves is not going to be enough. So we're looking at 3 areas of gating criteria in the source markets, in the origin markets, from where they're coming, what they're looking at here to where they're coming to, and our ability to get our business up and running again. The first is air service. All the international carriers have cut their service back. Some have canceled flights and routes, and there really is very little international connectivity that we had in a major way prior to the coronavirus. Consumer sentiment. In the end, we can do all of these things, but if the consumer doesn't believe that the experience they want to have in the mode of transportation, unless it's their own, to the destination they're going to, and the experience they want to have, unless we can convince them it's safe and secure, they're not coming. Entry policy. Right now, our priority markets on reentry, where we think we would have the best recovery opportunity, Canada, Mexico, UK, and Europe. Right now, you can't travel from any of those markets to here. So until those restrictions are dropped, till countries like Australia and India say that their citizens can travel, well, nothing we do is going to change anything. And then consumer behavioral indicators. We need to get a sense with our research that people are even starting to think about travel. So on the home market, we have to get on, not only do we have to get on top of the health pandemic around the world, but within our own country. Why do we think people will want to travel here when we can't even find a way for ourselves to get out and travel within our country? So we have to really get on top of that before we're ever going to have a chance to do anything. Hold on, my computer's got it. Destinations are open and ready to promote, and then the rest are about our partners, that they actually have resource and inclination to partner with us. All right, so the last thing I'm going to show you is if you get to a point where you can have a recovery campaign, what might that look like? So here we're going to recovery. All right, recovery. First, we need to generate measurable bookings through aspirational campaigns. Remember I said we're top of the funnel. We have little to do with activation and actual bookings. When we have a recovery campaign, we got to find a way to get bookings. We got to actually find a way to move people down the funnel and actually get them traveling. We need to make the USA the obvious choice. We need to represent the entirety of the U.S. By law, we're required to do that. All 50 states, 5 territories, District of Columbia, and the urban and the rural experiences equally. And then implement cooperative marketing. We need to get our partners contributing and get that whole engine going again. So that's what we're trying to do with recovery. So I told you we have our own proprietary research. All these sources also give secondary research to help us to fuel what our recovery campaign might look like. So here are the things that are significant contributors to that. The first, reevaluating the normal. I hear people saying all the time, oh, I can't wait till it gets back to normal. Old normal's gone. There are going to be lasting changes to the way we live that affects us personally and professionally, so it's a new normal. I also hate that word. It's actually a next normal, because the new normal hasn't even been defined yet. It's the next normal, whenever we settle into that. So it's important for us to be optimistic in tone and play against the DNA of the USA and everything that makes it emotionally connected to it. Optimism for the future of travel. Safety will be non-negotiable. That is the other thing that we have to guarantee, that it's a safe and secure environment. The freedom, and remind them of the freedom to fully experience the USA, which is what defines us. That is really truly to our core what makes the experience of the USA different than anywhere else. The great outdoors, that's what people are gravitating to, the things that get you outside, get you away from the confinement and the social distancing and whatnot. And then the road trip, the Americana road trip, the whole idea of actually getting in a car and traveling the country. Those are the things that have to be part of a recovery campaign. So, we're starting to talk about our engagement framework. Our goal, our marketing goal, will be to lead the international recovery of the travel and tourism industry as best we can in the ways that we can influence. Increase engagement with our content, and then as best we can not only influence intent but bookings. So what is our brand strategy? So it's going to be informed by a couple different things. Here's a human insight. Our lives have been interrupted and put on hold, giving us unprecedented time to reflect and to reprioritize our values. So again, it's not a demand issue. It's all about confidence in how this has rocked our personal worlds and our professional worlds. And then the brand truth is the USA is an aspirational destination that truly reflects the spirit of reinvention. And that is what makes us unique, and that's going to be the message we need to take and remind people of, that when we try to invite them to come back when it's appropriate to do that. I didn't change the slide. There we go. So what is our strategy? It's going to be centered around the whole notion of reset and go. It's not the old normal, it's a new normal. And then however that manifests itself, and however we're able to deliver on that, that's what the campaign is going to look like. And then I won't have time to go to these in detail, but once you have a strategy, you have all sorts of communication, but across the top you'll see it. It has to include a welcome back message. It has to bring to life post-COVID possibilities. It has to prove we're ready, first and foremost. It has to entice and convert. We need to drive it down the funnel. And we have to give it our entire effort with every tool that we have to make it work. And then this is what that framework looks like in a summary fashion. And then the last thing I'll remind you is our website is visittheusa.com. I invite you to download our app either on your phone or on your connected TV. It's called Go USA TV. There you'll find short, medium, and long-form content that tells the story of the United States of America through the eyes of us trying to reach out to consumers. There is terabytes of content on that site, that's stuff that we've created and that we've gathered from our partners. I didn't have time to show it to you today, but happy to encourage you to go to that app, and you'll see what we're doing as far as our messaging once we have a chance to message. So with that, I realize I ran close to being to the end, but happy to entertain any questions that were prior or otherwise. Thank you. I also left you a handout. On one side, it's how important tourism is to Florida. On the other side is how important it is to us, which also includes Florida. So just kind of bring some of the numbers in focus. Questions?
We're going to start. Is it on? Yep.
Yeah.
We're going to start with an excellent question from someone in our audience not here today, and it's the First Lady of Tallahassee, Jenny Daly. And she asks, what role does presidential outcome have on planning and forecasts?
So I'll give you a good example. When the current administration was brought in and the focus on protecting the borders, even some nationalistic focus of shutting the borders down, in early conversations, all the prognosticators were saying tourism's done. With that kind of messaging that we're sending around the world, why would anybody think that we were going to welcome them here? The reality is that didn't happen. And as a matter of fact, the campaign that won awards that we came up with, which was offsetting some of that conversation, was that tourism has the amazing ability to transcend politics. That what makes the U.S. has little to do with who's in the White House, who's elected to Congress, who's elected to any office anywhere in the country. And so, other than the fact that it does have a potential to have an effect on travel policy, meaning The current administration, rightfully so, and in many cases have shut our borders down and otherwise curtailed travel, because the first and highest priority is to get on top of the pandemic before we could do anything else. So other than that, for any president, no matter whether it's the sitting president or a new president, how policy might be changed would be the only thing that we would probably have to stay on top of.
Chris, first of all, I would like fellow club members to know I was here before Chris assumed the role of CEO of Visit Florida and what he did afterwards. I can tell you firsthand that he made a dramatic improvement. So thank you,
sir. Thank you, sir.
I mean, dramatic. He absolutely transformed Visit Florida into a really viable, meaningful. It helped get us from like 83 million. And Jerry was part of that. In fact, Jerry Barrett with us doing all the economic research and helpful to Visit Florida at the time. But also, just thank God you're right there, Brandy would say, at this time. I could not imagine someone else. We need to pray for your health.
So far, so good.
Thank you for sharing it.
Yes.
And your family. It's really critically important. We know how important it is in Florida and nationally and throughout our entire world. How important, you hear Fauci, Dr. Fauci talk about this, how important, and what are some of the scenarios if we actually have a vaccine or some medical intervention that either prevents it, blunts it, or somehow through improved health outcomes will dramatically give people some confidence. How important is that? And what are the scenarios you see, likely timeliness that happening, and if it does take hold, what are the 6 months, 9 months, a year, et cetera?
Thank you for the kind words, and thank you for your question. As I said earlier, this is not a demand issue. It is entirely a health issue and then a consumer confidence issue. We're all praying for a vaccine, and I think that's being fast-tracked in ways that have never been before. But what has to also happen is better testing. And I'm saying more testing, but even better testing. We need to have testing that's widespread and quicker. Because however that manifests itself, that's going to be a big part of the ability for us to project confidence, not just here, but all around the world, that we're going to deliver a safe experience and a safe venue wherever they're hoping to have that experience. And I think without both of those, it's going to be really hard, first of all, to get on top of it, and then otherwise to gain the confidence of the consumers. And without that, we're pretty much in our state of readiness, because it's going to be, any messaging or any issue would be tone deaf. So I would say that as soon as that starts happening, it's one thing about getting a vaccine, then you got to get it to 300 million Americans and then billions of people around the world. But the testing could go a long way. And I know the CEOs of the billion-dollar hospitality companies just sent a letter to the president and the administration that said, we understand you fast-tracked vaccination, but we need better testing. And that's the critical part of it right now.
Hey, Chris. Thank you for being here. I've got two questions. So first off, it's just kind of a play off of what you just said, and that is you were talking about the confidence that people have to have. So I read the newspapers nationally and locally, and it just seems they're scaring everybody out there. I understand the numbers. I understand the number of people dying, but 80% of the people are going to be asymptomatic or have mild or have moderate symptoms. There's only a very small percentage. So are you talking to editorial board, to the mainstream media in any regard to say, come back down and just be realistic? We're not asking you to back off of what you're pushing, but to put it all in a proper context. First question. Second question is, I saw all of the countries in the world that you showed where you have a footprint, and I noticed that Russia didn't have anything. So I'd like to know why Russia. I imagine why, but I'd like to know why from you.
It just meant we don't have a presence in Russia. So I mean, there's messaging and there's things going on in Russia. It's just very little government presence and very little presence on ours. So the other question, as it relates to the messaging. Remember, I said that our mission is to grow international visitation spend and enhance the image of the USA worldwide. And we have little to do with that image every day, and it's shaped every day, sometimes hours within the day. So that whole conversation about the impacts, the real versus perceived, and the ability to get on top of it, There's not a lot we could say to be part of that conversation, and because we're not the health experts, and it's got to be the health experts that, first of all, agree on that. Not all of them agree on that, whether you should use a mask, not should use a mask, or otherwise. But I think everybody has come to a consensus that these are things that can help. So until we get on top of that, again, which has little to do with us, I would say from the tourism industry's representation, U.S. Travel and its army of advocates, which are in the verticals, American Hotel Lodging, the ones that represent the retail and attractions and everybody else, they're the ones that are having those conversations at the federal level with all the appropriate people to make sure that for the reasons why it impacts the hospitality industry, that they're aware of that.
Captain McCarthy has a question here.
I can do it, just but the voice. Chris, first off, it's a fabulous presentation. I really enjoyed listening. My question is, how dangerous is cancel culture? I think about when I travel, very often I go to see historic sites around the world. When I travel in the United States, I go to see the history of our country. As we downplay the history, or even somehow make it dark, will that affect other people that might want to come to our country to learn about the Revolutionary War, the Civil War, the westward expansion, you name it. It seems like history is a big part of travel, so I just wondered how much that hurts.
So I'm not going to get into the politics of all that, but I will tell you that
Oh, come on, why not?
you know what, I said to you that my counterparts say you could have any experience that you could have in the U.S. somewhere else in the world. I think probably the thing that defines us is what made it, how we were founded, and those compelling principles that are for freedom and your ability to be able to be free to voice your opinion and travel freely and all those kinds of things. So, and people are very interested in the history that contributed to that. So as some of that is being compromised at the moment, sure, it's going to affect certain individuals that might be coming for that. But you know, it's part of what's happening right now, which I don't think we certainly haven't seen in a long time.
Thank you.
You've been listening to Chris Thompson, President and CEO of Brand USA, speaking before the Economic Club of Florida on August 5th, 2020 in Tallahassee, Florida. For more information on Brand USA, go online to visittheusa.com. The Economic Club of Florida promotes interest and enlightenment on important economic, political, and social issues of the day. To learn more, including how to become a member, visit our website at economic-club.com. This program was recorded at the Governor's Club in Tallahassee, Florida.